Well, the global energy crunch is affecting even the world's biggest exporter of liquefied natural gas, Australia. Its most populous southeastern states are facing a gas shortfall until the end of September. The country's energy market operator says it has begun talks with LNG exporters to make up for the shortfall. It identified gas supply shortfalls in Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia and Tasmania from today. This is the second time the operator has to press LNG exporters in Queensland to divert gas to the domestic market. And it's turning to 3 plants run by Shell, ConocoPhillips and Santos. The operator says the gas shortage is due to higher than usual demand for power generation, while coal-fired plants are experiencing outages. At the same time, a cold snap in the southeastern states is fueling gas demand for home heating. And over in Bangladesh, severe shortages of diesel and natural gas have forced the country to start scheduled power cuts today. It is the latest South Asian country to impose austerity measures. Dhaka has urged citizens to reduce their use of air conditioners. The government is also exploring options to cut office hours and reintroduce work from home. Bangladesh is the latest victim from the fallout of Russia's war in Ukraine, which has been roiling global energy markets. Well, Fabian Roningen, analyst at Rystad Energy, joins us now. Fabian, how is this record demand for energy affecting companies in the sector, particularly power utilities?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really impacting a lot of the companies in this sector, and really these heat waves that we have seen both in Asia and Europe over the last weeks has really been the top of the icebergs on the volatility in the global energy markets. So here, for example, in Europe, we have seen stories that Uniper now is struggling and need bailout by the German government, and also talks of renationalization of some companies. The biggest one being EDF announced today. So it's really impacting the sector a lot. And if we consider Asia again, the summer peak there is really much more higher than we see in Europe, where power demand usually peaks in winter. We have in many Asian countries, the peak being in the summer. And we have seen it like you showed in the last case there, that many Asian countries now is having power outages and also rationing of power, being, Japan, South Korea, India, China, and so on. So it's really impacting the sector and the companies in the sector a lot at the moment.
Yeah, Fabian, you mentioned the troubles facing Uniper and EDF. So that is in Europe. But what is the likelihood of rising bankruptcies and the nationalization of utility firms right here in Asia Pacific, especially for countries like resource-poor Japan?
I think this risk definitely has increased because the uniqueness of many of these Asian countries is that they are super dependent on energy imports. And in the power sector, that mainly being natural gas or liquefied natural gas and coal. So many of these operators are then very exposed to the current energy markets. And then if they have miscalculated their financial risk, or even if they have a sound business plan, it's very difficult to navigate with the volatility we see now, especially with all the uncertainty with the macro events that is very difficult to predict. So I think the likelihood has increased a lot, and especially, like you said, for countries that is very dependent on energy imports, particularly coal and gas.
And staying in Asia, what about China and India? Both are experiencing heat waves as well, and they are big importers of energy.
Yes, we can start with China. For example, in the second part of 2021, we saw the biggest power crunch in very many years in China, mainly caused by the coal shortage. So China only imports about 10% of its coal because they have so massive domestic sector for coal production. But we saw both a hit on coal imports, but also that domestic production was really lacking, recovering from the COVID outbreak. So this has improved a little bit this year compared to last year, with both of these measures increasing, both domestic production and imports. But the heat waves that is at the moment, and it's been going on for several weeks now, we have seen it many times in the news already that many of the eastern provinces currently undergoing heat waves, they need to ration power, and consumers are urged to save power. And it's even more significant in India. During I think we saw the biggest example during the March heat wave earlier this year, where coal stocks were very short and is still very short actually. And we saw results now from coal imports in June being record high for India. So they're trying to deal with the situation, but we have seen this both from power rationing and power outages, and also with record prices in the country. So both of these two countries are really struggling at the moment to keep the lights on and make sure that supply is adequate.
So then, Fabian, what does this all mean for consumers like you and me?
I think there's several aspects here, and one of them is just increased cost for the consumers. And this will be particularly hard hit in countries that have a liberalized power markets. So, for example, if we see in Europe, where basically the majority of the cost is just transferred to the consumer in terms of higher power prices. This has been a massive hit, and this started way before the invasion of Ukraine with record high prices in December last year. And after February, this just was even stronger. And now in July again, we see new peaks when the summer was hoped to be a relief to the market. It actually ended up being just as high prices as we saw in the winter. But also in all other markets, this means for consumers that they will have to pay more for the power. And the major other aspect is that in some cases you will have less access to electricity with all these rolling blackouts and rationing and urging from the governments to save power. So you have both the cost increase and the reduced services to the consumer. So it is the biggest power crunch in years for many of these countries.
Many thanks for speaking with us, Fabian Rovningonde from Rystad Energy.